On this week's show, we're going to talk about a return to form for Mercedes, a tough weekend on and off track for Ferrari, and, well, a pretty tough weekend for that Lando Norris guy. Hello and welcome to another episode of Back of the Grid. I'm your host this week, Tom, and I'm joined, as always, by Chris.
Hello.
Hello.
Do we want to talk now about how it wasn't Lando's fault that he had a bad weekend, Tom?
What? I didn't say it wasn't his fault.
No, it's not. It's your fault.
Oh, it's my fault. Oh, right, okay. I was going to say, what words are you putting in my mouth? I mean, the evidence is sat in front of you if you're watching visually. Man buys a hat. Driver of the hat represents crashes car.
Pretty consistently, you have a Tom's hat curse.
Tom's hat curse. I decided to wear it today so that I can be justified in everything negative I say about him whilst wearing a cap that I'm pretty sure damned him to crash into the back of his teammate. The last main culprit for this was the Carlos Sainz hat, as many people who are regular listeners will know.
Yeah.
I have hats for most drivers and most teams. If I buy one on a race weekend and wear it, it usually ends up in tears. So I'm sorry, Lando Norris fans, and I'm sorry, just general McLaren fans who weren't happy about that. It's probably my fault. But on a more positive note, Mercedes.
Great weekend for them. I would say as close to perfect as you can get weekend for Russell. Stuck it on pole with a really impressive lap. Won the race, fastest lap. Couldn't ask for any more. He had to absorb like a bit of pressure from Max, but he kind of just looked in control the whole time, didn't he?
Yeah, they brought back the rear suspension that they originally tried in Imola with some adjustments. And I mean, we talked about it in the preview that the Merc in general has always gone pretty well at Canada, even in years when they've not been a dominant car. And I think bringing that upgrade back after working out whatever they didn't like about it in Imola and then getting this performance for both drivers and a double podium, I think if it wasn't for Max being Max and just being able to get what he can out of a car, that could have been a 1-2 for Mercedes.
Yeah, easily.
It wasn't just for how solid Max was this weekend. It's just good performance for all the top three, I would say, realistically. Very strong performance for all three.
Yeah, I mean, Mercedes' kind of Achilles heel with that car tends to be fast corners and high temperatures, and Canada has neither of those. So it was kind of set up for them to do well. But as you say, their car historically has gone well there. And just really good drives. That's 5 podiums this season now for Russell, which is already more than he had all of last season. Only something like 19 points off Verstappen, I think, in the drivers now.
There or thereabouts, he's closed it down a little bit.
Pretty close. Yeah, really, really impressive drive from Russell. It's the kind of race he wins, isn't it? Like when he wins races, he tends to just... That's kind of his whole style, though. It's not a very dramatic driver, is he? For the most part, he just kind of quietly goes about his business and grinds out results, and it was very much one of those kind of drives for him.
Yeah, he spent a lot of his time at Mercedes essentially keeping out of trouble and just being consistent at finishing behind whoever's dominating that given year, basically. Like there was his average finishing position was like 5th for so long because you'd got both the Red Bulls and like both the McLarens finishing in the top 4 and he was just always there. And then whenever something went wrong ahead of him, he was always there to pick up a podium. And he spent a long time being just consistently there. But I think, when things do fall into place for him, like this weekend, and you've just got that perfect setup, he can 100% get a result out of the car. I think the thing that George can now work on, I guess, like the thing for him is to maybe start getting to the point where he can get a result that he shouldn't be getting, if that makes sense. Like we always talk about people like Max and Lewis in the past winning a race they have no business winning.
Pulling results out of a car.
I think that's a bit of something that's missing from someone like George's skill set at the minute, but I think if you put him in a good car, in a good conditions, that everything falls into place, he will just go get the job done, because he's very smooth and very consistent, and that's definitely where his strength lies.
He's driving fantastically this season. He's having a really good year. Also, Antonelli, another really good drive for his first F1 podium, third youngest driver ever to stand on the podium. And just really good for him after the triple header we had before this race. He came out of with no points. He had a really rough run of races. So to get a result like that is a really good bounce back for him. Had to absorb a lot of pressure. He got a good start. He didn't launch past Piastri off the line. He had to race him through the first few corners to get that position, and then basically held Piastri off for the entire race after that. Super impressive. Really, really good drive for him as well.
Yeah, really solid. And like you say, I think it's important that he's been able to bounce back from that run of unfavourable form. Obviously it's not like it was all his fault or anything like that, but even power unit failures and car issues can start to have a negative effect on your performance, can't they? Because you start to almost lose trust in what the car's capable of doing, and you may be afraid to push as hard as you want to for fear of something like that happening again. So, yeah, to be able to do what he's done was a really good drive from the pair of them to get the best out of that this weekend.
Yeah, it really was. Also, for a little tidbit for you, he is the first Italian driver on the podium since Jarno Trulli in 2009, which is a rough patch for Italian F1 fans.
Yeah. At least Ferrari have been great in that time.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
I've got to get my Ferrari cap now.
Yeah. Also moves Mercedes back ahead of Ferrari to second in the Constructors' Championship. We had to sit and wait for a protest to be sorted out by the stewards after the race. Red Bull protested Russell for, they said, erratic driving under the safety car, unsportsmanlike behaviour for when he was complaining on the radio about Max, saying Max has overtaken the safety car, and also for dropping 10 car lengths behind the safety car, all of which was rejected by the stewards on all counts, basically. The erratic driving part, they just said, it's pretty normal to speed up and slow down to warm your brakes under the safety car, nothing weird there. The 10 car lengths thing, interestingly, the steward report didn't mention that, but an FIA representative did say they allow, it's not a open and shut case if that happens. They allow a bit of wriggle room for things happening. And actually, at the point where he dropped behind, he was actually just following his delta on his steering wheel, because although you're behind a safety car, you still have to follow your the delta that appears on your steering wheel, because obviously there might be cars that are not in the train yet and they don't want them speeding around to the back. So actually there was no case there at all, really.
Yeah. I do still think there was a bit of gamesmanship going on behind the safety car when he did slow down the way he did and Verstappen came past him. I think there might have been a little bit of a just not intentionally trying to get him in trouble, but just almost messing with him a little bit, knowing full well where he was. But I don't think. I think Red Bull and Max are obviously, well, Red Bull specifically, really. It's not necessarily Max, is it? But Red Bull putting in that protest is more just. You just try, don't you? You know full well if it had been exactly the other way, Toto Wolff and Mercedes would have been putting in exactly the same protest. So
it made me laugh. As soon as those two were on the front row, everybody was like, "Oh, they're definitely going to hit each other." At turn one, they hate each other, and he was just like, "There was nothing. There was never anything except for that little small safety car incident."
Yeah, and to be fair, I was expecting just one of the most awkward rooms of awkward after the race ever. But
it was fine.
They were actually fairly civil and had a polite little chat, didn't they, about what had gone on through the race?
It probably helped that they were all interested in seeing what happened with certain other cars during that race.
True.
I enjoyed in that cool down room when Antonelli was like, "Oh, I didn't know which one of them to give a slipstream when they were behind me."
Yeah, that was good. This week's episode of Back of the Grid is brought to you by SeatFrog. SeatFrog is a super simple way to upgrade and adapt your train travel by providing a way to bid on first-class upgrades and swap pre-booked tickets if your plans change. You can join over 1.5 million people who've already saved money on train journeys today and get an additional £3 off your next booking with the code GridFrog at checkout. You can even buy discounted tickets outright through SeatFrog without having any added booking fees, so download the app today and start saving. And don't forget, use that code GridFrog for an extra £3 off your first purchase.
Max, you mentioned about the best result he could have hoped for, I think, under the circumstances. He seemed happy after the race. In the entire lead up to it, I don't know if you saw any of the press conferences, but he was extremely annoyed for the entire weekend leading up to the race. Basically because every journalist was just continuing to ask him about the penalty point situation and how he's... And you know what? I don't blame him at all for getting annoyed, because literally every journalist was asking exactly the same thing. And it's like, what do you want the guy to say? Like, it's like, he's got a load of penalty points. He can't get any more. He's not that's it. Like,
once he's answered that question once, there's no other way he can answer it. And I can understand why it's frustrating, because they all these different reporters from all these different outlets want their own version of the soundbite to be able to quote and use. That's why they're doing it. But yeah, it must get really tiresome and really old. Like,
massively.
And it's not the first time we've seen Verstappen get berated by the same question over and over again, and it get annoying. We've seen people like Vettel and Lewis sort of defend other drivers and stuff, saying, like in the press conference, like saying, "Can we stop talking about this, please? Like, what's the point?" Like, it's just, You'd have thought that once there's an answer, but everyone just seems to want their own version of the soundbite that they can use.
It's almost like the press are trying to like goad drivers into like getting annoyed and saying something else just to like get more headlines. Like, it's This
is the thing, though. I don't know what they'd expect them to say, other than the fact he will turn around and say, "I'm sick of answering this question. I will not answer it if anybody else asks it." That's the only reaction they're ever going to get out of someone like Max. He's not just going to suddenly turn around and go, "You know what? Yeah, I did do it on purpose, and I wish I'd have done more damage to his..." Like, he's not going to say that at all. They're not going to berate him so much that he just goes, "Yeah, well, I wish I'd completely taken him off the track." Like, it's not going to happen.
And equally, it's not like he's going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm really scared of getting another penalty points. I'm going to like give everyone a wide berth. If anyone tries to overtake me, I'll jump out of their way." Like, come on. Quick word on Tsunoda. Frustrating weekend for him. Actually, one of his better qualifying performances since the Red Bull switch. He was just outside of Q1 in the end. But he got himself a 10-place grid penalty for overtaking under red flag during practice, which was a very silly thing to do. And unfortunate, because like he started on hards and went really deep into the race to one stop. He ended up finishing just outside the point. So without that penalty, I think he could easily have been, you look at the cars ahead of him, you've got like, what is it? Behrman, Sainz, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Alonso are the cars in front of him. He should have been able to finish ahead of some of those, given the amount of places he did make up during the race. So, positives, but ultimately a bit of a lost opportunity for him there, I think. Should we do McLaren?
We're going to have to.
Bit of an off weekend pace-wise for them, really, compared to what we've been used to this season. Kind of all weekend, they were just struggling to get on the same pace as Verstappen and the Mercedes at the very least, and some others. They had some new suspension parts. I think in the end, Norris took them and Piastri didn't.
That was an interesting one, though, because that was from my understanding of what I heard, that was actually to do with Piastri not particularly wanting to change much about the car and being relatively happy with it, and Norris looking to change the behaviour of the car and get it more back into an area he feels comfortable with in terms of like a working window. So, yeah, interesting sort of phase of split development, I guess, for them to be able to provide some slightly different setups to each driver correspondingly.
As it was, Piastri managed to qualify third, Norris down in seventh. He didn't really get a clean lap in again.
It was, he caused himself problems by unfortunately making a mess of his first run in Q3.
Yeah.
And didn't have a banker lap, so had high pressure on his secondary lap and couldn't get the time. So no one but himself to blame there, I'm afraid.
Yeah, fortunately. And then strategically, it was actually really interesting. We had a lot of kind of converging strategies this race that all came together in the closing lap. So Piastri did medium, hard, which was the same as the top three, whereas Norris did hard, medium, hard, which was probably the better strategy. Again, another frustration of this race for Norris. He looked like the fastest guy out there for big chunks of that race. Like the way he closed that gap up on the top running guys was super impressive.
He had, in that last stint, a genuine chance at being on that podium.
100%.
He took a little too long to make the move work with Piastri. And then, obviously, when he did eventually get into that position,
it all went wrong.
What happened. It all went a bit 2011.
Yeah.
Let's say.
But yeah, I mean, Piastri had been kind of close to passing Antonelli, but couldn't quite get it done. I think with the advantage Norris had, there's a good chance he would have been able to do that as well. Yeah, he sort of had to have a few. Go on.
We say that. So I was just going to say there was essentially a point where watching it live, I was essentially sat there saying, Norris needs to pass in the next 2 laps or it's too late, essentially. And he had 2 half-decent opportunities with DRS, but couldn't quite make it stick. And then he ended up in a situation where Piastri was getting DRS from Antonelli.
Mm-hmm.
And had he made the pass work before Piastri being able to react and close that gap, or maybe even when Piastri dropped away from Antonelli a little bit and started losing DRS again, I think there were a couple of scenarios where Lando had to be as decisive and as aggressive as he was into the hairpin when he actually did more or less make the move work. And it became a drag race. But that led, obviously, to him having a great... The way he essentially let Piastri commit to the inside on the final chicane, let him have such a good run coming out of it and carry much more speed through it. I just don't understand why his instinct was for the inside, because like I feel like generally speaking, you don't see that many moves being done on the inside of turn 1, but you sort of see him being completed in turn 2.
Yeah.
And like logically in my head, as I see that situation play out, I'm looking at it thinking, get around the outside of turn 1, hang it out around him to get yourself the inside line and the curb for turn 2, and essentially take that line to get the best run and get him like really far out wide in turn 2. And I know it's fine for us to be sitting here in his armchairs watching the race saying, he's gone the wrong way there, I'd have gone the other way. But like at their level, you would expect them to instantly think like that. And it's just a really, really bad instinct, I think. Like that gap is always going to close, I think, on that side. I think, because it's pretty much the natural racing line, isn't it,
mm-hmm.
for that portion in a racing scenario. So I just don't understand why that was the side he decided to dive to.
Like, making an overtaking attempt on one side and people saying, "Oh, you should have gone the other way," is one thing, but when you're literally driving into a closing gap, really strange spur of the moment decision making there, and just super costly for him. Like, you've gone from, worst case scenario, he wouldn't have passed him and would have finished behind and would have ended up losing a couple of points to Piastri. Best case scenario, he passes him and he gains a few points on him. As it is, he ends up losing 12 points to Piastri in the championship. It's 22-point gap, I think, now. Such a costly mistake. He held his hands up, took full responsibility for it, which is, fair enough. I guess hats off to him for that and not making excuses. But when you're in a world championship fight, you can't be making mistakes like that, excuses or not.
Yeah, and it's a shame because considering his poor result from quali, through the race, he'd done everything else right up to that point.
Really well,
and was, like I said before, he was genuinely with a chance of a podium. And we all know Piastri was never going to make it easy for him, and the team were never going to team order that switch round or anything like that. That bit is never expected, but you definitely expect better in that scenario that happened there. And it is a little weird how eerily similar it is to the Hamilton Button version from 2011 that we'd sort of, like, I think a few people have obviously made a comparison to it. The slight difference there is that there was a bit of a bigger gap that Lewis could have gone for, and there was a lot of spray, so it was a little bit harder for Button to see where he was behind him and for Lewis to see exactly where Button was and stuff like that. So mitigating circumstances there, but it is very weird to see McLaren basically do a rinse repeat in the same, almost virtually the exact same spot of the pit wall as well, where they've made contact. But very disappointing for me for Norris. Hence me wearing the hat just to extra shame him.
Couple of other details on this. Norris was given a 5-second penalty for the incident, which obviously at face value seems very strange when he DNF'd. However, because he completed more than 90% of the race, he was still classified, which is why the penalty was still applied. If this had happened earlier in the race and he was found guilty, he probably would have got a grid drop for the next race instead of the penalty. But a weird quirk of the way F1 results work, if you go and look at the official results, he's still down as finishing 18th rather than not classified, even though he's also down as being a DNF. So there's 3 DNFs in the race, but Lawson and Albon are not classified, whereas Norris is classified 18th, which is why he still was given a time penalty. And, there are situations, I suppose, it'd be a very weird situation, but there are situations where that 5 seconds could make a difference to a race result. But,
potentially. I mean, depending on exactly when it happens, you got to remember they go behind the safety car, and depending on how many laps are left, there's maybe somebody who can't unlap themselves or something like that. There's depending on exactly where it happens and when it happens, it could affect that, like you say.
It's also possible.
It'd be an argument to apply the penalties to help balance that out, I guess, to some degree.
Yeah, also possible a race could be red flagged and then not restarted, at which point they would take the results from the previous lap, I believe. So that 5 seconds actually could make a big difference there. There are situations where it would make a difference, but in this one, it does seem a bit weird. Also, despite being found guilty of a collision, which he obviously was because he was given a penalty for it, no penalty points on his license.
Yeah, I thought he might have had at least one coming his way. How many did Ocon get when he hit Gasly in Monaco? Did he get 1 or 2?
Knowing the way Ocon's treated, he probably got 5.
10-second penalty for Ocon.
Yeah.
Ocon got a 10-second penalty for this, didn't he?
Yeah, probably. Discord is saying it was 2 that Ocon got. Okay. I'm not sure if Stroll got any points this race for his penalty either as well. I'll have to look into that. But
it feels like it's a classic of policing the outcome. I said this in Discord when we were talking about 100%. It earlier. Like, it's because Piastri's got on his way, finished the race, had no position adjustment, and Norris is out. It's almost like, that's worked itself out. But realistically, if most people looking at that would say that's a questionable decision made at a very high speed that could have ended very much worse for both drivers.
Yeah.
There should probably be a penalty point put out there just as a bit of a, you can't be making moves like that at that kind of speed next to a pit wall.
Yeah, and I mean, the way turn 1 and 2 are laid out, if they had come together in a slightly different way, one of them couldn't have again launched across the track between 1 and 2 and, potentially taking someone else out. So, as it was fairly innocuous. Like, obviously, Norris was out on the spot. Piastri continued. Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
And, without opening too big a can of worms, you see a lot of people on the internet with the opinion that stewarding is done based on the type of passport a driver has. And it's hard to argue, as much as I don't think that is the case, it's hard to argue against it when you've got drivers like Verstappen, for example, picking up lots and lots of points for various things.
Yeah.
And then Norris does that and gets no points. Like, imagine if Verstappen had done that in this race. Everyone would have been losing their minds given his penalty points situation.
Did he get penalty points for going into the back of Ricciardo that time at Baku? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, because that was still within the penalty point
era,
wasn't it? Because I can't... I don't know, actually. They didn't dish them out as readily back then as they do these days, though. They really like to dish out penalty points for the most part, unless it's Norris.
Even more surprising that Norris didn't get any, to be honest.
Yeah, really weird on that. Very surprised they didn't give him any for that. Let's move on to Ferrari, who had a pretty rough weekend all round, actually. Leclerc only 8th in qualifying. Out-qualified by Hamilton again, actually, which has happened a few times in recent races. Leclerc only able to recover to 5th. Hamilton, meanwhile, lost tons of downforce because he hit a groundhog early in the race. Don't know if you saw his post-race interview, but he seemed far more upset about killing an animal than he did about his race result.
I mean, I'd not seen that, but I did see it being discussed in this.
Yeah.
I heard this news from Fred Vasseur in his post-race interview, so I didn't hear it directly from Hamilton. Man. Yeah, I mean, I suppose that just shows what he's expecting of the Ferrari at the minute. If this is not the first time this season, though, where Lewis has ended up in a bit of a weird no man's land where he's been off the pace of the front runners, but way comfortably ahead of everybody else, and he's just in this weird existence on his own almost.
I was literally just looking at like a graph of sort of position and time over the race distance, and it's like the top 5 all grouped really closely together, Leclerc a bit further back, an absolute chasm, then Hamilton, a second absolute chasm, and then everyone else grouped together. Like he just was nowhere near anyone, just in that, like you say, a weird no man's land.
Yeah, and I think there was a point where when Norris was sort of chasing down Piastri and closing that gap, if you remember, there was a point where they came on the radio and said to him, if there was a safety car, we've got the opportunity to essentially free pit stop before anyone behind us catches us, which is the 2 Ferraris, isn't it, at that stage? Mm-hmm. And because Leclerc's strategy sort of pushed him back into that gap eventually. Weird scenario between Leclerc and Ferrari actually in that scenario, because the whole thing of suggesting a one strategy to him and him saying, I think this one's better, them saying, okay, and then persisting to go with the one that they originally said, like just ignoring what he'd asked for. And I think that just frustrated Leclerc, and he then got in his own head about what was going on.
Because he did hard medium. He was the only one to do that.
Yes.
Everyone else that started on hards either did a 3-stop with a medium middle stint, or they went long and 1-stopped it. So, yeah.
I think from the sounds of it, once he was near the front and in clearish air, he was looking to try and do the likes of Hulkenberg and just go as long as possible on the hards and then do a switch to medium and see the race out, because he was... And like the Ferrari reasoning on the radio was, we want to do as short a stint as possible on the mediums, and Leclerc was like, but I'm okay with the mediums, which... I mean, he doesn't know he's not necessarily seeing what's happening for everyone else around him, but the team have to be giving him that information so that he can at least make an informed decision. Like, it just smacks of them doing the classic, we'll just do what we want and we don't care what the driver wants.
And I do think, looking at the gaps around him, he probably would have finished in the same position had they gone long and 1-stopped him. But again, he doesn't necessarily know that and didn't seem to be given the information to be told that. He was just called into the pits. Not a great one again.
No.
Lots of weird stuff swirling around Ferrari off track as well. There's been a lot of kind of rumours swirling about Fred Vasseur's future in the team. In one point in an interview, he said something like Ferrari have changed the team principle, they've changed the drivers, and we're still kind of where we are, so maybe the problem's somewhere else. And then Hamilton, in one interview, also was like hinting towards something else going on behind the scenes that he couldn't necessarily talk about. So does that point to there being kind of a rift between the race team and the kind of higher ups running things? Is there something more going on there? I don't know. There's definitely some weirdness swirling around Ferrari at the moment.
Well, I mean, what they probably need to do is look at what the World Endurance team are doing, see what they're doing differently, and copy what they're doing differently.
Yeah.
Because the WEC team, albeit not perfect, are very good and very consistent at the minute. And lo and behold, they've had the same driver lineup, for example, for 3 years now, is it? Like, it's... Whatever, I don't understand what the difference is between the way the endurance team is managed and the way the Formula One team is managed, but I do seriously think that the Formula One team need to take some lessons from the endurance team.
Yes. I will say, during Le Mans, there were a few points
Ferrari-esque moments.
Ferrari meddling with things unnecessarily and trying their best to
throw
things away, but...
In a 24-hour period, that's fine. That's like the equivalent of 10 races for Formula One.
Yeah, that's it. If
Ferrari, the F1 team, could leave things alone for 9 out of 10 races, they'd probably be in a much better position than what they are now.
We'll move on to Williams. Really disappointing after the way they started the weekend.
They looked good initially.
Practice 1, they were 2nd and 3rd. Practice 2, they were 4th and 6th or 7th. And then, as it was, one of them just about ended up 10th on the grid, 10th in qualifying, which became 9th on the grid, I think. And then Sainz was out in 17th.
Yeah, Sainz didn't have a great quality. Albon did all right, and like you say, through... I'm trying to think whose penalty it was. One of the penalties, though, he ended up 9th, like you say, on the grid.
But, I mean, they look like having the pace to be well in the top 10, so bit of a disappointment there. And then Albon had that very bouncy trip across the grass on the opening lap, which was... I'm amazed he didn't break his car more, to be honest. That was... really sketchy.
The way he went nose first, he sort of launched across the grass and then went nose first back into the ground. So, I'm quite surprised they didn't do more damage to the car. In general, but they then just made a Ferrari out of the strategy. They left him out way too long on those medium tires.
Yeah, they left him out on the mediums longer than anyone else. He went through kind of lots of pain, and then they finally brought him in to try and stop it from there. And not great.
But the problem is they got him in a horrible middle ground where he was far too slow and far too late getting off the mediums, but came off the mediums far too early to really make the one stop work. And that they should have just pitted him when everyone else was pitting him, which is, I believe, what he was asking for.
I think it was, yes.
And they were trying to eke him out, and then he was essentially getting frustrated. I mean, similar situation to the Leclerc one, where the driver's asking for something and he's feeling unlistened to and unheard and getting more and more frustrated about it, and it's almost sort of bearing fruit in the performance because...
And he did sound very frustrated.
Right. Yeah, I felt like really sad for him at one point. There was a radio message that they played and it was like, I don't know why you guys don't listen to me. It really annoys me or something like that. And I was just like, oh, poor Alex. He just wants to be heard. Bless him. But yeah, nobody in this scenario is saying the drivers are always right. But it's got to be a horrible feeling when you're in that car driving it. And in both those scenarios, Leclerc, Ferrari, and Albon at Williams, they're essentially just going, yeah, but we know best.
Yeah, basically.
And not even acknowledging really the...
Yeah, we hear you. Well, I mean, we're going to ignore you.
Yeah, Ferrari acknowledged Leclerc because we got an okay copy or whatever it was, traditional Ferrari response, which made you think, oh, okay, they're gonna go with Leclerc's strategy, and then the next thing you know, they're like, no, we're going for B anyway.
Yeah, IndyCar, box.
Yeah.
Sainz made the one stop work. He went very long on the hards. He did 57 laps on his first set of hard tires.
Got himself a point.
Yeah, scraped his way back into the points, so that was something at least.
I mean, that was kind of thanks to Norris smashing into the back of his teammate, but still, from where he started, not that bad a result.
Alonso was great this weekend. Ever since they bought those upgrades, I think he was in Imola, he's looked so much happier in that car. Put it 6th on the grid and only finished one place behind that in the end. 2 points finishes in a row for him. It just goes to show, we've said this before, like when the cars are under him and he's not really fighting for anything, he just kind of switches off a little bit, I think, doesn't he? Or he just eases back a bit. But the second you give him a sniff of a result, he's still got... The skills are still very much there for him.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, Lance Stroll, let's talk about him. Back from his hand surgery. Obviously, going back to the media thing, everybody was asking him about how his hand is, which I think is a fair question to ask a driver who's just missed a race because of it. And, he's under absolutely no obligation to discuss his medical situation with anyone. But he was being kind of weirdly coy and secretive about it. And in the press conferences, he kept his hand in his pocket the entire time, so no one could even see it, which was just only going to make people ask more questions. Very, very odd behaviour from him.
Look, it's no coincidence that the man's name contains the word troll. Lance Stroll is just a troll.
Pretty much.
I mean, I think he's got to be. He's got to be just trolling people at this point. It's stuff like that, and
really weird.
Yeah, doing things like what he did in the race, really good move, and everyone's like, "Oh well, at least Lance has still got a decent move in him." Proceeds to then push said driver into the wall. Okay.
Yeah, it was a really good pass on Gasly at the hairpin, and then just psych, I'll give myself a 10-second penalty by
decided to forget he existed less than 3 seconds later.
Yeah.
Couple
more people to wrap up. Alpine didn't score again. Colapinto a lot better in qualifying. I think he qualified 11th, which became 10th after penalties, but couldn't quite hold on for points. But good to see a bit of progress from him.
He's moving in the right direction at least.
He's had some rough qualifying sessions recently, so that was good to see at least. Hulkenberg in the points again, back-to-back points finishes. Qualified 12th, and then he also stopped his way up to 8th place, which was really impressive.
Yep.
And likewise, Ocon also one-stopped his way into the points. He also took hard tyres all the way to lap 57 and made that work really well.
Seems to be a staple of the Haas, that, doesn't it? It's something the Haas appears to be pretty good at, generally speaking, is sticking on the hardest compound and getting enough performance out of it to stay relatively competitive in the midfield, but then also be able to stay out long enough to get to the point where they can one-stop. Because, I mean, you used to get Magnussen and Hulkenberg. We know Hulkenberg's always been pretty good at looking after his tyres anyway, as he's proven a couple of times this season in the Sauber. But I think like the combination of him and the Haas, you sort of saw it consistently, and then Ocon being able to do it this season in the Haas is probably a bit of a testament to the fact that that car is, although not one of the fastest, it's at least very good on its tyres and allows gives them this in their arsenal, which they've been able to use to their advantage, realistically.
Yeah, impressive. And, again, Bortoleto still yet to score points, but he was kind of his usual distance behind Hulk, which has got a little smaller. He was flirting with the bottom end of the points at certain times, but didn't quite work out for him again. Behrman as well, he only just finished outside the points. So, yeah, both those teams sort of picking up results here and there where they can.
Yeah.
Right. Should we drive the day?
Let's give it a go.
Should be an easy one, I think.
So you're going with Russell then?
I mean, it's between Russell or Antonelli. It's the two Mercedes guys, isn't it?
I think for me, just because it's his first podium, I want to go with Antonelli. I want to give a little bit of celebration for that.
I do as well.
Really, really good drive to stay in touch with those front two. Because for all accounts, Russell and Verstappen could have just completely disappeared, but he did a very good job of keeping Piastri at bay, did the hard work early in the race to get that position off Piastri to begin with, and then, solid drive. And, I mean, it's impossible to forget because they don't ever shut up about it on commentary, but he's an 18-year-old kid, nearly 19, and there's not many. We only get one or two a generation, like Verstappen before this, and probably Vettel before that can do good things in this sport at that age. And I realise as I say that, Lance Stroll is the other 18-year-old podium sitter, but will not acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Canada. I don't think Canada cares, to be fair.
Yeah, Kimi's good, man. He's going to have a very good career, I think. He's showing all the right signs.
He's very... What I like about him is, his quite laid-back, chilled-out demeanour. Maybe it's because he's spent a lot of his childhood watching him, but he does remind me a little bit of Valentino Rossi. Valentino Rossi was always, still is, very just chilled, sociable, laughing, having a good chat with everybody. And I feel like you get similar sort of vibes from Antonelli. And he's just, it'll go far in that team. And he's got a good relationship with George for now. The way that they're sort of big brother, little brother in each other. He's working for now. How long that'll last if that car becomes competitive next year, for example, is another story. But yeah, for now it's working. So yeah, I'm really inclined to give it to Kimi this week.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Nice.
What about move of the day?
It's really annoying because had it not ended the way it did, you'd have probably said Norris on Piastri at the hairpin.
Yeah,
but he just didn't get the run out of it. The initial move was great,
really good,
just couldn't see it through. Then that unfortunately leads you to the only other person who I believe made that work, and that is Lance Stroll and Pierre Gasly. But again, he then decided to run the guy into the wall, so I can't give it that either.
There's always Antonelli getting Piastri at the start. That was a kind of, as I said before, it's not like you just launched past him. He had to hang it around the outside of turn 1 to stay alongside enough to have a dive into turn 3.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to think of much else, though, to be honest. It was not an overtake-heavy race.
No, I mean, it was one of those races that wasn't really an instant classic for Canada by the standards we've seen over the years, was it? But the drama at the end kind of he's going to end up being one that's remembered for a long time because of that. But if it had not been for that, most people would have generally forgotten about it
100%.
to some degree. So yeah, not the best advert for the Canadian Grand Prix. It's been a bit weird this year, hasn't it? Like, there's circuits that you normally really look forward to because it's a good race, and they've not been all that great. And then circuits that are in turmoil have been dropped off the calendar, or that you don't normally expect a good race at. They're actually having decent ones. It's it's a weird one. What are we going to give it to them? We're going to give it to
I'm
Antonelli.
tempted to say Antonelli, I think. Like, going toe-to-toe with the championship leader at the start, making it stick. Yeah, I'm gonna give it to Antonelli.
Okay.
I'm doing it. I'm making a decision, yeah.
Double Antonelli.
And
last one?
Yeah.
Honestly, what the are we doing here?
I am tempted to say Stroll for this, just for
no
doing a really good overtake.
No.
And then immediately ruining it unnecessarily. Like, the job was done. Like, I know Gasly had got back alongside him, but he had the inside line. Job was done.
No. It's Norris, man. Come on.
Yeah, it is.
It's Norris.
I'm trying to do our usual thing
he says
of not
in the
going
Norris
back
hat,
to...
It's Norris, man.
It is. Yeah. I don't know why I'm trying to steer away from it.
I can't think of anything...
more appropriate.
The thing is, right, we give Lance Stroll a lot of crap, as does most of the F1 fan base, and probably deservedly so, because when he did what he did to Gasly, was anybody surprised? Was anybody shocked by it? Not really. It was just, yeah. But I think Norris should know better.
No, you're totally right.
Stroll should know better, but you're not surprised when Stroll does it. You're a little bit more surprised when Norris decides to just drive into a wall and his teammate at the same time.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. It's Norris.
Thanks. I mean, there's an honourable mention from Paul in the Discord chat live saying it has to be a WTF nomination for Crofty this week. He's gotten so much wrong, including saying Max was undercutting Kimi when he was always ahead of him.
Crofty was poor even by his own standards.
One of those weekends then.
Yeah.
I had the joys of Julian Palmer and Alex Jake, so I was fine. Always good on my side. Yeah, okay. Right, should we cover a bit of predictions and fantasy?
Let's.
So, not a high-scoring weekend, as you can probably expect with a George Russell double, but somebody out there went for it. Matt James scored 3 points for a George Russell double and 17 finishers. And then Christopher Kninsland, I hope I've said that right, got Russell for pole, 17 finishers, and Behrman in 11th. So that swung nicely for you to a 3-pointer with Norris's incident bumping Behrman up a place. So there you go. In the overall standings, Gordon Barham is still our leader at the moment with 17 points, but it is close as ever. There's a lot of people very close to Gordon. So if you want to get involved with the Predictions League, head to backofthegrid.com. You can see where you are in those standings or what your results were for Canada. And then next week, we will be covering the predictions for Austria, and you'll be able to submit your predictions there. So go check it all out. Over in the fantasy, the official F1 fantasy game, Lewis Hamilton was this week's winner with 233 points. But I'm pretty sure at this point people are making these names intentionally just because they know we've got to read them.
Yep.
Because leading the way overall is Wyan Wacing with 2,317 points. So those two names together appear to be, I can't wait until Tom has to read this out in the fantasy section. But yeah, Wine Racing leading overall. And then over in the GridRival fantasy, Fernando Albonso is this week's winner with 1,104 points. And Krusty Onion is still at the top of that leaderboard with 9,614, but the lead has gone down to just 48 points now. So Krusty Onion is slowly being reeled in after a really strong start. If you want to get involved with those, again, head to the website. It's backofthegrid.com. And there's a fantasy section where you've got links to the official F1 fantasy, GridRival fantasy, and then we also do an IndyCar GridRival fantasy, which you can get involved in if you're interested in that side of things, which, Chris, you are second in, and I
somehow
won the weekend this weekend somehow. The complete novices who don't know anything about IndyCar, other than the Indy 500 happens at the same time as Monaco. That's literally the only thing we know about IndyCar. I mean, we had to have a debate this week about why a race was called the 500.
Yes.
And then we discovered it's because it was 500 kilometres, but it's not actually 500 kilometres. It's actually 540 or something like that.
And also, I still don't 100% believe that's the reason why, because why would they talk about kilometres in America? This metric nonsense.
What is this metric nonsense?
Should we talk Le Mans briefly before we do Inbox? Because that was the other big thing of the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning just for those who don't follow it but have followed F1 for a while. I think it's worth mentioning who won Le Mans this weekend.
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, it was a third Ferrari win in a row at Le Mans, but this time it was the number 83 AF Corsa Ferrari, which is a sort of a privateer run, using the same car as the Ferrari manufacturer team, but it's run by privateers, driven by Robert Kubica, Phil Hansen, and Yuki. And it's one of those, like, everyone's happy for the result kind of wins, given what Robert Kubica has gone through. A lot of people will know back in 2011, he had a horrific rallying accident that put him out of Formula One for a good many years. In fact, like he'd never said that much about it, but I think he was on Beyond the Grid. It might have been recently. He said like he broke like something stupid like 40 bones and like lost most of the blood in his body. It was like comparable to that accident that Alex Zanardi had back in the day, where there was like more of his blood on the ground than left in his body. A horrific accident. But the other detail around all of that is at that time, he had signed a contract to drive for Ferrari in Formula One the following year. So for him, all these years later, to go to one of the biggest races in the world and win it in a Ferrari is like, it's just so good. Like the guy was a fantastic Formula One driver. He deserved a much better career than he had. So to get a win like this is really well deserved. And like I say, just like no one's going to be unhappy to see that guy getting the kind of result that he really deserves.
Yeah, definitely well earned for everything he's put into getting back into the top levels of motorsport since that accident. I mean, obviously people will know he attempted an F1 comeback that just didn't quite work out, unfortunately, but started to have a good career in endurance racing from the looks of this. So, for that entire team, like you say, first Polish winner, first Chinese winner, first privateer winner in a long time, I think,
very
as
long
well,
time,
to be honest. I mean, technically it's 3 wins in a row for Ferrari, even though it's not a factory team. There's a lot packaged into that win. So yeah, like not necessarily the most eventful or interesting Le Mans 24 hours there's been in the last decade, probably, but one that you still feel good about the result regardless. And
100%.
I think the thing is when you fell into that last like 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours, you were essentially watching it because you were willing that 83 on, and you were thinking, is Kubica going to stay in it? It's like he basically did. Not quite, but most of the final 4 hours, and was very close to the limit because you're only allowed to do a 4-hour stint maximum before you've got to change drivers. And I think he did just over 3.5 hours. So you're watching that thinking, at what point is he going to give it up? And he was like doing stop after stop after stop for fuel and tyres, and you're thinking, he's taking this to the end, isn't he? Like
and he
wants to be the guy in that at the end.
He looks spent as well.
Yeah.
I think he said he'd basically not slept for like 35 hours at that point.
Wow.
And he's leading a hypercar home at Le Mans. Yeah, really
crazy.
Cool. Really, really cool. Yeah, very happy for him.
Great result.
Should we finish up with some inbox?
Let's.
Keep it saying now. No, stay out. Box. Hey, man.
Do you want to start or shall I?
Go on, I will. First one this week is from Tom Murray, who says, "Hey, man, given that Rosberg took a selfie in front of the kink before turn one before the race, is it now entirely possible that the Rosberg curse has shifted from folklore to plausible?"
I mean, it's as real as the hat curse. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
It's been an ongoing joke for a number of seasons inside the Discord community, but I did have to share the fact that I literally went to Costco, saw this Lando Norris hat, bought it, put it on my head, and got home for the race, and what happened. So
you need to stop you buying hats and stop Rosberg taking selfies, basically.
Nobody will ever stop me buying hats, that's for sure. Or we start clubbing together and buying hats intentionally.
Maybe, yeah.
To match fix.
Get a.
Buy me a hat, I'll wear it. Result goes terribly for that driver. We all win somehow.
You need to get a Piastri hat next race just to like balance things back out and bring the championship a bit closer together.
I mean, they were selling Piastri hats as well.
There we go. For the sake of the championship,
and get one.
Yeah.
For the sake of it. Do you know what? If I do that and something happens, that 3 out of 3 is curse confirmed.
Yeah.
3 out of 3 will be curse confirmed. Right, Gabriel Umverzagt, I hope I pronounced that right, says, do you think the McLaren drivers will be coming to blows more often? And if they do, who do you think will come out on top?
I don't think so. Like, if this had been them going wheel to wheel and it being an incident, I think it would have been potentially a much bigger blow up afterwards. But the fact that this was so clearly a mistake on the part of one of the two of them, he admitted the mistake, the other driver carried on and finished the race. Like, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. And I still struggle to see a world in which those two really do fall out and start having more incidents like we've had with other driver pairings.
Yeah, I think... I mean, in answer to the other bit of it, I think if it did ever start getting a little heated between them and a little bit more intense, Piastri's coming out on top because he's just cool 24/7.
Yeah.
He doesn't let things rattle him. He doesn't like he genuinely probably wouldn't have expected what happened because he was just focused on doing what he was doing and covering that inside line, which is a realistic thing to do. Like, there was no... I don't think Piastri was phased at all, and I think if things did get heated between them, yeah, Piastri would be the one that would come out on top. I don't think it will, because I think that they are close enough still. And the McLaren vibe is quite civil, so I don't think we'll get to that point anytime soon. But if we did ever get there, Piastri's going to come out on top.
In a similar vein, Sean asks, says, "Hi guys, love the show. Do you think the championship battle between Norris and Piastri will be dampened by the seemingly friendly rivalry they have, as opposed to the Rosberg-Hamilton era, when there was an aspect of tension present a lot of the time?"
The thing is, though, Rosberg-Hamilton started out fairly civil as well to begin with. Everyone was like, oh, this is so cool. These guys have been karting together since they were kids and their dads are really close friends and it's all cool that they're in a team together and they're pushing Mercedes forward, blah, 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 blah. And it was all like happy families for a while. And then it started getting close and tense, and then everything just sort of fell apart in the relationship. And
that took a year or two, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like an immediate thing. So if the McLaren continues being a competitive car and it generally is considered to be between the two of them for the next couple of seasons, yeah, I think that it could get as frosty. And the thing is, though, I think that out of that pairing where Hamilton was always fairly cool and relaxed, and Rosberg was clearly the one that used to get more frustrated, like the whole throwing the winner's cap thing, like all that stuff. Although I suppose Lewis did start that, but anyway, that's in the past. Yeah, I think like Rosberg was always clearly the agitated one in that relationship, I think, even if Lewis was trying to wind him up. And if you're going to compare the two relationships, I would say Piastri would end up being the Hamilton of that scenario, and Norris would end up being the Rosberg of that scenario. And Norris would maybe do the same thing as Rosberg, like eventually win one and then go, right, guys, I'm out, I've done it. and then Piastri will just be like, okay, guy, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But I, at the minute, I genuinely think out of the two of them, Piastri will win the world title before Norris does.
Yeah, I just struggle to see Piastri getting angry and upset about anything. Or for like maybe a minute and then he'll just like move on. Like he just doesn't seem to be the kind of person to...
He vocalizes it and then moves on. That's it. Like, because you do hear him on the radio occasionally, like, oh, wow, what is this guy doing? Or whatever, like just making comments, but it's vocalized and it's gone. Like it moves on instantly. And I think that's quite powerful when you're in the situation that they're in, because you just regain focus and continue as you were, basically.
Yeah.
So... yeah. Do I need to read the next one? I think I do.
You do.
Jesse Lee says, "Hey man, last week in the pod you asked if Canadian fans like Lance Stroll. We did. I'm from Alberta, Canada, and I do not claim him. I don't hate the guy, but I'd never go to the Canadian Grand Prix to support him."
We had a few people on Instagram as well, sort of basically saying, "I'm Canadian," and shrug, basically.
Yeah, and a couple of comments on stuff like the shorts on like YouTube and TikTok, but again saying the same thing. Although we did find one Lance Stroll fan out there in TikTok world, if you're listening. Can't remember the name of this person, but someone did.
There's at least one out
say
there.
They were a Lance Stroll fan. I think I did reply something cheeky along the lines of, "Well, someone's got to support him."
Last question this week from Wes, who says, "Hey man, has Lando just proven he doesn't have the mental game down enough to win the World Drivers' Championship? I get wanting to pass for position and points, but that almost seemed like a desperate or rookie-like mistake. He should be thinking about the now and the long game, and it seemed like that's been a challenge."
I mean, it's a fair assessment, isn't it? I think when you look at the year in F2, where he was racing against Russell and Albon and Nick de Vries.
I think he was around then as well, yeah.
Like, if anyone, George was the one who cracked under pressure in those seasons. I remember George, like, when the pressure came on, I mean, to be fair, it wasn't always George's fault in those seasons. Sometimes it was mechanical. But, like, in those scenarios, Lando looked one of the stronger, if not the strongest, to be perfectly honest, in those seasons. And I think it's that he's got a problem with racing two particular drivers, and he can't put aside that he's been beaten by two particular people. And those people are his teammate in Piastri and his friend, I believe, I would call him that, in Max Verstappen. Like, and although with both relationships, he's really close and pally-pally with them off the circuit, when it comes to being on the circuit, racing wheel-to-wheel with those two drivers, he just seems to crumble. And I don't know what it is. Like, I think if he wasn't racing against those two, he would be fine. And it's just something about that. Like, even when he was racing with Ricciardo, there wasn't really an issue there. He looked stronger than Ricciardo, right? Like,
yeah.
And Sainz, him and Sainz together, it was all fine. It's just there's something about Piastri that seems to irk him, and he also struggles when he's racing wheel to wheel with Max. And he brings out the worst side. Like, Norris's biggest enemy is himself. He's extremely hard on himself. He's extremely negative, and he's very quick to get into that negative mindset, whether it's against himself or whether it's against somebody he's been racing with. Like, throwaway comments that he makes, like, well, if you're racing with Max, it's like go off the track or get smashed or whatever. Like making comments like that, and then Piastri's in the background thinking, I got past him, mate. Like, do you know what I mean? Like he's just very negative in those scenarios, or the times when he's not had a great session, and it's comments like, "What do you think you can improve to make something in the race, Lando?" And it's like this, and just like pointing at himself, like that negative mindset is never going to get him anywhere. So
yeah.
I think he's got a problem racing a couple of people specifically, but he's genuinely, I think his biggest problem is his own negative mindset to himself. And until he sorts that, I don't think he'll ever mentally beat Piastri or Verstappen, because he will always be thinking they're better than me, I'm not as good as them. And it breeds that negativity. And that's when mistakes like what he made in Canada probably come out, because he's probably thinking I can't speak on his behalf because obviously I'm not him, I'm not in his head, etc. But I can see where he makes the move at the hairpin, and in his head he's like, yes, I've got him, I can go get Antonelli, let's go. It's all positive. Then Piastri gets a good run on him and also gets DRS, and they're dragging down the straight, and he's thinking, oh no. And then Piastri obviously outbreaks him into the chicane, and he's thinking, oh no. And then when he gets a run on him, he's like, I've got him back. And he just dives for a move, like, I've got to get past him now. And it all just becomes like,
I think,
negative and rushed emotionally.
Yeah, I think he was racing him harder than he needed to as well. Like, as much as Piastri was obviously trying to defend, I don't think if Norris had slung it around the outside at turn one, I really don't think Piastri would have defended it that hard. I think Piastri knows he's leading this championship. Yeah. He is a much better, bigger picture thinking driver, I think. And I think if Norris had slung around the outside, Piastri would have, like, put his car there, defended, but he wouldn't have taken any risks. He wouldn't have put them in a position where one or both of them might crash out. And I think Norris probably would have ended up getting the place into turn 3 in the same way that Antonelli got Piastri on the first lap. Just not good. As Wes says in the question, it's like it's thinking about the now and not thinking about the long game as well. And it's definitely something he needs to work on if he's going to take this championship fight back, as well as his qualifying, which has let him down again this weekend.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That sees us out, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah.
The final Lando Norris from the pair of us sees us out. Right, so if you would like to suggest other hats I should buy for Austria, head to backersgrid.com and fill in the questionnaire form, the contact form, or find us on the social media platforms. And if you just want to send inbox, you can do that too. But suggestions for hats I should buy for Austria will be welcomed, and we'll see if we can confirm the case. But yeah, get in touch with us through the socials if you want to. If you're with us here on YouTube, then please do remember to like and subscribe and all that stuff. Leave your thoughts on the hats down in the comments. That is it. We'll be back next week for the preview one. Go watch the highlights of Kubica winning for the next 24 hours, and go watch the highlights of the IndyCar, because by all accounts it's a very good race to watch, I guess.
If for nothing else, for the ludicrous pyrotechnics at the start of it.
Yes. Watch it for that, if anything else. Right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.